YouTube family, it's Yvonne from Ginger Chick Rehab. On our channel, me and my husband Chris do thrift flips. We take unwanted, unloved, outdated items and give them new life. And we share the process of what our vision is for these items, what we do to fix them up, paint them up. And we are resellers, so we sell them here locally, but we love to share our vision with you here on our channel. Even if you are not a reseller, maybe it's just something that you have laying around in your own home that you are just like, hey, I want to update that, or I want to give that new life. So in today's video, this is a part of Sunday Funday. This is the last Sunday of the month where I am blessed to co-host with Janie and Diane of Decor Easy. This is a great playlist. This is a relaxed playlist. You just sit back and enjoy these very talented YouTube creators. They can put anything on this list. They can show you a thrift haul, they can show you a DIY, show you how they have decorated their home. It is just nice to sit back, have no pressure, and just do something you love, because one of my little sayings that I've kind of said over time was do what you love and love what you do. So I hope that all the creators today are sharing what they love. Now Janie and Diane, oh my gosh, they love farmhouse decor. They can put a vignette together like no other. And if you have not subscribed to their channel, pop on over, subscribe to their channel, hit their notification bell so you can see their wonderful inspirations. So in today's video, I will be sharing you my thrift haul. So throughout the month, I am always thrifting. I get to be blessed and take you along with me when I am out thrifting. I am so happy that you come along with me. And then I also have where I go every day in my local town, and I have a thrift haul. So this is what this video is. This is where I am sharing my vision with you, what I'm doing for these items to make them over and get them ready to resell. So here we are again at the end of the month. This is where I show the collection of the largest collection of my thrifted find items, my items that I will be making over. I'm going to be sharing my vision and what I do, the process of how I get all these items ready to resell. I always have to share this in case you are new to my channel. I always remove any tags off any of my items, any price tags, any store stickers, unless it's a numbered piece, which is an antique usually. I take all the tags off. Nothing says a thrifted flipped item like painting over a tag. I will be re-donating these candlesticks. I have no use for them. I don't resell candlesticks. This little photo holder, this little memo holder is loose, so it needs to be tightened. And this little piece of wood that held all the coasters is also loose, so it's going to need fixed also, along with that little piggy cutting board who is coming apart. Sometimes it's just the plain and simple way of cleaning. Sometimes these metal items, when they heat up, the tags are removed, the dirt will come off, and so I just do the Dawn dish soap in a sink full of hot water. For items that you just can't throw in a sink of hot water, I'm just using that Dawn today. That is a perfect degreaser for cleaning up these items. So these items are just getting all wiped off with this hot water. Do you ever wonder, is it the color that made the person thrift it, or an unwanted item, or was it just plain and simply that this little nut needed to be tightened back down to make that so it wasn't just a little dangly clip, that it was nice and tight? So the simple fix is just screw it back on and get some little needle nose pliers right here and get it tightened back up. I have to say, when it comes to painting a mirror, I am always very happy when I can remove the mirror. Now, I have to say, I was kind of getting confused. I'm like, I should just be able to open these up and it should pop out. But I have to say, that's not my usual, or this isn't my usual. I actually had 2 pieces of glue that glued this mirror in, but I was managing to get it loose and pop that out. And knowing that I'm going to need to spray this flower, that I'm going to be removing its wire. It's all kinked and all kind of a mess anyway, so I will just be replacing the wire later. I'm not sure if you all have seen this hack where I've been using some contact paper on the back of the items that I don't want to paint. I'm going to be spray painting a lot of these items, and so this contact paper that I've had, I bought it for stenciling, but when I weed it, I can't really see it. I tried tracing it with a Sharpie, so I do use it as transfer tape, but during the first lockdown, I had purchased a whole bunch of it, so I'm glad that I found a use for it. So I don't want to remove this rust on the back of that, so I'm using this. So yes, pretty much everything is getting an undercoat of this black flat Rust-Oleum paint and primer. This is what my go-to for spray painting metal items. So I absolutely love the adhesion, the longevity of this type of paint. And if I can, I like to start from the back of my items first, like that little star. I'm not, because I wanted to save that back. Really, for me, when it comes to spray painting item, it's whatever. If I flip it upside down, I flip it on the side, what can I get the most coverage with my first spray is what I'm looking for. So that's why these items are standing up. It'll just be a little quick fix to get to the little bit of the bottom that they have left over. So I have to say, painting this flower petals was quite interesting. So trying to figure out how to tackle this. First I'm like, oh, we'll go back and forth my usual. No, that's not going to work. So then I'm kind of doing these short squirts, trying to get in between those petals. I don't want to pry them apart. One, I'll get my hand all painted. And two, I don't want to put on so much that it drips and runs, because spray paint is not very kind and does not look very good when you have to sand drips off. And if you have ever wondered, is this Rust-Oleum paint and primer safe for wood? Yes, right on the packaging, it is. So there's a couple of these pieces just for what I'm doing right now and doing these round robin group of items. I'm just going to get them sprayed up with this also. Just the way that to hit these candlesticks and hit the edges, I just feel as if they will get a smoother paint job. And especially for this little thread holder, I want to update it. I want to give it a new paint job, but how do I get in between all those little dowels without building up paint? Yep, I spray paint it. And I know I had a few of you who were like, oh, leave that red, sell it for Christmas card holder. Okay. Yeah, but so that's going to be used for a month out of the year. And when I'm looking for pieces, I am looking for decor pieces that you can use year round. If you're going to spend the money on decor, I don't want to see this beautiful envelope just out for a month and then put back into a box. So I'm sorry that I made a few of you sad, giving it a new life, a new paint job, but I want to see the longevity of this piece and that it can be enjoyed all year long. So even though this candlestick sat in a hot sink of soapy water, it still has wax in it. So all I'm doing is taking a heat gun, or you can do this with a blow dryer, something to heat that wax up that you can wipe out, and then use a little bit of a cleaning product, because you know most candles have a scent or oil in them to get that off. You don't want anything to prevent your paint from sticking, and yes, wax will. So though I get the best coverage and the best adhesion for this spray paint, this Rust-Oleum, I, over time, have figured out that I need to seal that in with a top coat before flipping it over and doing the other side. A lot of times I have marred up paint and had to go back in and spray more, so it's worth the time. I absolutely love this polycrylic. I prefer it in the matte, but in these times, sometimes all I can find in the satin, and it's just something to seal in between. So now I can move on to flipping these pieces over. That polycrylic is dry, and I feel safe that I can flip these pieces over and do the front side of them, or the back side, depending. I decided that I wasn't going to keep this one natural. I was going to end up painting the back of that also. And yes, instead of carrying these all back into my spray room, I'd gotten the most coverage with that first coat. So this is just a quick little coverage of the Rust-Oleum paint and primer, just to get any of those little pieces and parts that were missed with the biggest coat at the first. So I just leave them grouped here together. We have a ventilation system in our workshop, so this works out perfectly. See how I said it's just a little bit. Okay, so maybe not for this petals on this flower, but I had done everything else first and then save this for the last because I knew I'm still trying to get in all those little crevices, those little corners, those little flaps of these petals, but I definitely wanted to give it new life and update it. So now that I've gotten polycrylic to the top of these pieces also, and it is nice and dry, I am going to be painting most of these pieces using this Waverly chalk paint. I have to tell you, I have been liking this for my metal pieces. Yes, my Kills paint primer works just fine, but just the way that this has been making the black and the white pop and the way that I can distress it, I'm just absolutely loving this. So as you see on this little tray, this is my version of enamelware. Yes, I know a lot of enamelware is mostly white, but like I said, this is my version. So when we are DIYers and we are doing flipped items, we can do whatever we want. So that is what I'm doing. So I'm just taking a little bitty paintbrush around the handles because I want my handles to stay black, and as you see, I taped off the wood of these handles because I did not want that to be spray painted. It's just all a personal preference. So this is kind of a nice relaxing type of paint job for me. Yep, I could do my Kills. It doesn't matter, you're still going to have to put multiple coats of white on anyway. And then sometimes when I sand metal pieces with the Kills, I have to use a pretty rough sandpaper that sometimes leaves like streaks, not a blendy way of sanding. So I do love water distressing these metal pieces. So I hope you guys all enjoyed that as much as I did painting it. So now I'm attempting my first flower. So I'm like, yep, I'm going to go in with this chalk paint. I'm going to take a small brush and I'm going to start off with my little bitty flower first. But sometimes I know you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, is it worth the money to go in and do this? Yeah, to me it is. I absolutely love what I do. So like I say, if you love what you do what you love. And yes, it is well worth it. Just getting to use your creativity and sharing our vision for these items and just taking this into a different level by just painting it black and white. I just absolutely think, yep, it is worth my time. So I'm just going in and getting every different little petal, the front and the back. So for this cute little pig, and Chris really liked the white on this little piggy, but I told him it did need the ginger chick paint job, but I would be more than willing to put that white stripe right back. Well, it actually needed the white stripe because it actually had indentations marking of where it needed to be, but I definitely love this little piggy. And for this little can and those two milk cans, I'm doing the exact same thing as I did with that tray. I'm giving them the ginger chick enamelware look. So I'm going through gingerly with the little bitty paintbrush around the top where I want to leave that rim look like enamelware, that black little rolled top, and then around any little handles with this little detail brush first. And the same thing with this envelope. I want that little rolled piece, that little piece that's standing up, that little edging to stay black. So I'm going in very gingerly with a very slow, not an overly loaded paintbrush, and just running across that stripe. Yep, I could just spray paint all these white and get them done and just distress, but it's just a different look when you paint it on. So I have to tell you, I would have never switched over from my metal items to chalk paint if I had not done those cabinets a while ago when I did that challenge with Corey from Desert DIY on a chalk paint, that you guys all helped me achieve this look. You teaching me how to use chalk paint, of how to paint items. I thank you a lot. Painting furniture pieces is one thing I definitely love, our Kills and Paint and Primer, and I will probably never change that. But these small items and the way that I can paint these with these chalk paint and then water distress them and then seal that in, I just absolutely love them. So I have to thank my viewers for teaching me. It's nice that we can share back and forth all the tricks and tips that we know. Okay, we made it this far. Time for this great, huge flower. So I'm going to go in a little bit gingerly with this paintbrush. The nice thing is I can really get this into coats with this Waverly chalk paint. It does adhere very well to this Rust-Oleum paint, but I didn't want to get a bigger brush at first because I didn't want it to glop over, run off the back. I want to try to keep that back as clean as I can, which I don't know if that's going to be achievable or not. Okay, yep, nope, I was going to actually paint this like I painted that petal, and after doing that flower, I'm like, no, this is wood. I'm just going to go in with a couple coats of this Rust-Oleum painting primer in white. So I have to say that I do find it relaxing to paint. I don't know about you all, but I just absolutely love doing these pieces, putting on something to watch, enjoying just some quiet time, and just painting away. Here's the trick that I learned. Yes, when I first started this YouTube channel, I used a folk art paint, but I did not know that you could water it down. I was a newbie. We all have to be new at some point of our lives. We can't be born with a ton of knowledge. So this is where I have fallen in love with the Waverly chalk paint, is because you all told me to water it down or mist it. And for these small pieces, I choose to just put a little bit of water in a bowl with a little bit of the paint. And now that's what I'm doing. I'm just mixing it together. And this is going to give me a nice smooth coverage and a nice smooth paint job. And then I quickly realized, what the heck am I doing? Why do I not have this flower on my Lazy Susan, my turntable? Okay, yeah. Isn't that funny how you get in something and you know something and then you're just like, why am I not doing this? So yeah, now I put it on the turntable, and so this will make it a lot easier to paint this flower. When it comes to these little milk cans, I really can get this into coats. I think that's the reason I do like the chalk paint versus my kills for these, because a lot of times on the kills I'm going to have to still put 3 to 4 coats. So the coverage is a little bit better on these metal items for me, and then I still have to go in a little bit gingerly where the handles and that rim is, so I do go back for a 3rd coat to touch them up. But I do absolutely love how I water this down and how I can get that smooth coverage. Now that I have this little thread holder nice and covered with that Rust-Oleum white, I am just going in with the Waverly paint just to make it match all my pieces. So yep, now I have coat number 2 done. You can really tell the coverage difference between the first and the second coat. So as hard as I tried, I still had paint go on to the back. Maybe I should have tried the contact paper trick. It is what it is. So I am going to go back in with some black ink chalk paint, because of course I'm not going to spray it again, because the spray will go between the petals again. So I'm just going to go in, and I started off with a little bitty brush at first and then quickly realized I needed just to do full coverage on the back and then seal it in with some polycrylic. Now I'm going in and distressing these pieces, just taking some water. We don't have water in our workshop, so I just refill this bottle with our sink water. And then I just am using a piece. We cut up pieces of drop cloth that I use that are leftover pieces from other projects I do. And for this piece, as you saw in the first video when I thrifted this, it has a lot of textured pieces. I did not sand that smooth because that's what I wanted to distress when I went back in with the water. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to hit all those high spots of that distressing that was originally on this piece. And then I find that Waverly chalk paint in ink is a great touch-up. So if I touched anything, instead of trying to scrub it off with water, because this chalk paint is water distressable, I found that it kind of made a mess when I tried it the first couple times that I did it. So now I just go back in and touch up any areas with this little ink, because I'm going to be waxing these and sealing them in with polycrylic anyway.
For these little milk cans, what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to hit any of those lines, any of those bump outs. I'm going to rub a little, you don't want a ton of water on it. You want to put it in the water, you want to squeeze it out, and then kind of use your muscles, you know, going back and forth until you reveal some of that black that was underneath for that beautiful distressing. That's one reason that I spray painted them black, and then I sealed them in with the polycrylic. If I did not seal them in with the polycrylic, I find that Rust-Oleum will blend in with my top paint and make a gray mess. So that, if I have to give a hint, seal that Rust-Oleum paint in or your black paint in. Here's where I'm talking about sandpaper versus water distressing. So with the sandpaper, that you have those little grains of sand, that little roughness. And so when I go in to do the veining like this, sometimes it scrapes and it doesn't sand no matter what sandpaper I use. A lot of times I have to go back in and touch areas up. So that's why I like this water distressing. I can just put a little bit of water on. I can take my nail into that veining of these leaves and get the exact distressing I want. Now for this piece, I left it black on the back. So for the outer edges of this piece, and just for this piece, yes, you can sand chalk paint also. I've seen a lot of people do it. That's what you all have trained me, and I have learned from you. So I am actually just sanding this piece with some 220 sandpaper and getting the distressing that I'm looking for and that nice smooth finish that I'm also looking for. And then, yep, anywhere that got that white paint on the back of my items, that's what I said, this ink chalk paint matches up that Rust-Oleum perfectly. And yes, I do have to seal it in with a little bit of polycrylic, but for me, I always say my back sides are just as important as my front side, the entire pieces. So for this tray, it did not have any veining, any bumped out areas, so I'm going to fake it a little bit. I'm going to put a little bit more pressure just to give it a little bit more distressing, just a little bit more character. Of course, I wish it had like the bump outs when I did those tiered trays, but it is what it is. And we as a DIYers, like I said earlier, can do whatever we want to our pieces. So for this flower piece, I am going in with a 300 grit sandpaper. That's a really fine sandpaper. And I am smoothing those petals down and I'm hitting the edges of those petals. And then I'm going into that middle stem. You know, there's a stem in the middle of a petal, and I'm going to be running it across that. I'm going to be doing this first before I go in and wet distress it. This is just a massive piece, and I'm afraid if I try to water distress at the beginning that I'm going to be getting all those petals all a mess, and then I'm going to cause my back to be all a mess again. And then I'm going back in with some of that Waverly ink, and I'm kind of feathering it out because where I had done it previously just looks like a round circle, and we know how God does not make flowers that way. He kind of feathers them all together, so that is what I'm doing here. And then I'm going to run it across anywhere on the edges. I just want to brighten up those petals with a little bit more black. So I guess there's no wrong reason when I asked if I should polycrylic it first or if I should wax it first, whatever. I want the longevity of this chalk paint. You have to seal chalk paint with something because it is not a finished product without that, because it will always keep coming off. Since you can water distress it, you know every time you touch it, it's going to come off and you need to seal it. So for me, I find that this Varathane wax works perfectly fine with this Waverly chalk paint. I tried the Waverly wax, but I found that it was still distressing the piece more. And so that's why I switched over to my go-to of a Varathane wax, and I absolutely love. It doesn't seem to be rubbing it off like the Waverly. I know that's weird, but that's what it was doing for me. So I just put a little bit on, wiping it off, and then letting it dry. And then now as I'm finishing up all these items with their paint jobs, I'm sealing them in with another thin coat of the polycrylic. Okay, so the votes were all in, and it was a 99% paint this piece. It does not fit into your farmhouse theme. It is just an IKEA piece, and so it needs a paint job. So after getting it all cleaned up, all the stickers removed, that IKEA tag taken off, here we go again with painting it black. So both sides are going to get the black Rust-Oleum, and then of course sealed in the black with the Polycrylic. I didn't feel the need for you to watch that whole process over again. Now I can get this mirror all cleaned up, get that tag sticky removed, and my go-to is just these Minwax cloths. I just cannot suggest these enough if you do not have a set of these. So now that I've got everything painted, waxed, sprayed with polycrylic, now it's on to all those little details that really make a piece pop. Yep, all that paint makes that piece pop, but there's still so many details left in so many of these pieces. So I hope you're along for the ride. So for these little handles, they are wooden. They have a top coat on it. So I need to sand that top coat because to me, the handles are still a little bit outdated. This natural look doesn't do anything for this black and white paint. So yep, you guessed it. If you were one of my regular viewers, you knew she's gonna Waverly Antiquing Wax. Yes, you are right. Not only am I going to be doing those handles, but I'm going to be doing the inside of this piece also. That is just going to make that, it's going to blend all that paint, all that polycrylic. I did steel wool just a little bit when I wanted to open up that polycrylic, and it just richens up. Just the inside of this container is going to get this Waverly Antiquing Wax just to richen it up. One more set of protection with the polycrylic is going to protect it, and this wax is going to protect it too. Then not to be forgotten, this flower candlestick, I kept it black. I had no vision for this in white, but I definitely want to seal that paint in and richen that black up with using some Waverly Antiquing Wax also. You thought, oh my gosh, she's still going. Yeah, I still had those wooden pieces. When it goes to reselling items and filling a booth, you have a lot of items to do. So like I said, this little piggy needed to be taken apart, sanded so that is smooth, and he needed to be re-glued back together. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm just removing some of that leftover previous glue that was on there and going to get this bad boy, this bad little piggy, back together with some Titebond glue and some clamps. So actually on this grouping, I only have one thing that I want to put a stencil on. And as you see, the word thread is just that little spool holder. So all I did was go in and pick out this farmhouse font and type out and size the thread to the size that I needed it for. And then I cut out on some Oracal vinyl. I like the permanent. This is what works best for me. Using some the Clear Duck brand contact paper as my transfer tape. I got it all weeded. Now I transferred it on to my little wooden piece that I wanted to put the stencil, made sure that it was even, and then rubbing it down to make sure that my vinyl is stuck, and then I can remove my contact paper that I'm using as my transfer tape. And then for me, I try to cut the image as much as I can to the image itself. Just helps me make it so that I can really get it even and level on my piece. So then I just wrap around masking tape, Dollar Tree masking tape, so that way when I'm going to do my black color like this, that I'm not getting that black paint on where I don't want it to be. So I'm just using that makeup sponge from the Dollar Tree as my application brush, my applicator, and then just a little bit of paint on, doing the dab it technique, and go over it a couple times to achieve the black color that I'm looking for. And then 99% of the time, I always use the heat from a blow dryer to release that sticky from that permanent vinyl. That way I'm not pulling off that white paint, that previous paint that I'd put on. I am just leaving the nice crisp lines of the stencil behind. As you see here, I just wanted to leave that thread nice and black. So all I did was spray a little bit of my acrylic spray on it. I didn't distress it. I could have waxed it, whatever you need to seal that in. There's something about wood, white, and black that, oh my gosh, just makes my heart flutter. So I had thrifted a whole container of these wooden spools. So when I saw this spool holder, I knew exactly how I wanted it to display. Yes, I have a ton of ladies that sew that do enter our mall where my antique or where my craft booth is. So I definitely know that this will catch their eye. And so all I'm doing is using this thicker jute because I felt as if it matched those little wooden spools. I did not glue those wooden spools down, you know, so if somebody really wanted to use this as a decor piece or if they wanted to use it to put their own threads on. So all I'm doing is just making a little hanger system. But I am touching those little corner knots where I cut that off and where that little inset of where the previous hanger was. I want to put a little bit of hot glue in there and make sure that it's a pretty secure bond. Would hate for this to come off somebody's wall when they have it hanging up. So I hope you all are enjoying the show. And remember, if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please hit that subscription button and that notification bell so you know when I've uploaded a new video. But here I now am working on these little milk cans. Yes, I could have just left them plain and simple, but you can buy things like this at Walmart, so I need to put some decor on it. If you all had seen my crockery stamp that I had just done video, this is the crockery stamps that I'm using, and some of them are kind of milk related. So that's what I'm looking for, which ones are milk related that I can snap onto this little milk can. Just something a little bit different than the other person's. I mean, when you're doing crafts like this in a craft mall, you want to make sure that you got something a little bit different from the person next to you. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just eyeballing, trying to do this round object, trying to do even pressure, and I do have to go back in and get that corner, but you know what? Remember, it's the perfectly imperfect. Even back in the day, things weren't completely perfect, and that's what gives it that handmade look. I probably should have applied it this way the first time, but it is what it is. I had a lot of people tell me to use this Stays On ink pad, but I already have this ink pad and I already have my acrylic spray, so I'm just going to take it outside and do a little spray to make sure that that is a permanent bond. And I like, when I put ribbon on a piece, I like to do a little bit of glue. I like to make sure that it's not going to move around. You know, people touch pieces in your booth, it gets moved around, and I'd hate for it to come unraveled. So I just did a simple bow, and I just wanted to stay where I want it to stay. So that's what I'm doing, letting the jute show me where it wants to be. So for this IKEA bowl, I am looking for the smoothest paint job I can get, and I started spraying this when everything else was pretty much already sprayed. So I ran myself to Walmart and went and got a can of this chalk in linen white. I've never used the spray chalk paint, so here we go. That's what I'm going to be using on this piece, because yet again, I know I don't want to have to go back in and sand with sandpaper on this piece, and then I want to be able to go in and water distress all those edges to bring out that black that I'd taken the time to do underneath. Do you all wonder if this is in real time? Yes, this is. This is a Sunday before this video airs, and I am working on all these pieces and parts. I go from one thing to another thing to this thing to that thing, because you're constantly always waiting for paint to dry. So yep, now I'm on to putting a little bit of this lavender. Thank you, Julie, for telling me that this lavender was at Walmart, and I was lucky enough to run across a few pieces of it. So I'm not really sure if it is lavender season or not, but I love it. So, and then when I was getting that thing, spray paint at Walmart, I needed some more of this foam from the Dollar Tree. Luckily, I do have these two stores in my town. So all I'm doing is stuffing that floral foam in the bottom. I don't like my florals to move, and I don't glue it in, because if you want to take it out, a lot of times I watch glue ruin paint jobs. As long as it's not moving back and forth, I'm happy with it. And as you see, you can cut this floral foam with anything, especially the ruler. To say that I was sad that I actually had to go buy floral foam, because usually I thrifted all the time. Like this bucket of dried grass to cover up that floral foam, it's all thrifted. I am amazing. Do not ever avoid the craft section in your thrift stores, because there is always pieces and parts that you can definitely use. One thing I can suggest about doing florals like this, cutting off those, all these are wired, so get yourself a good pair of wire nippers, because the wire nippers I use are nice and sharp, and then cuts these down so well. So what I'm doing here is now I like to do all mine in pieces and parts. I have OCD, I have some control issues. I am a gardener also, so I like to make it flow the way that it grows. So that's what I'm doing here. I do my centerpiece and then I kind of get that height in the middle and then work my way out, and then I will fill in. I do my high first and then go in. And the nice thing about it, this is all wired, so then you can bend it in directions that you want it. If I think it's going to be too long, then I just snip a little bit more off. And remember, don't forget to turn your piece around. Work and see what it's going to look like from the back of the piece. Because sometimes these aren't just sitting on a shelf. Sometimes these are sitting on somebody's table. So you're going to have a 360 view of this entire piece. So now that I have everything straight up, what I do is now I'm going to bend the piece. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in kind of at an angle. So then that's the way it kind of grows. It's not all growing straight up towards the sun. It's kind of all coming at different directions. So now I'm going to be crisscrossing some of these pieces to get that nice fullness. I don't want to have to use more than one piece because, as you know, I only bought 3 pieces from Walmart. So I want to get the most fullness out of this that I can. So, okay, so now I've used that whole piece of lavender and I have all these pieces and parts left over, but no, I am not going to be throwing these out. I'm going to put a little bit of hot glue because they are not long enough to go down into the foam, and that hot glue will make them attach to that grass. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to make that what's in that milk can even fuller by adding these pieces and parts. Just don't throw those away. Get this to look as full as you can using minimal product, because that's what the buyer wants. They want it to look nice and full, a little bit better than what you can purchase from the big box stores that are mass produced. Here's another one of my craft section at a thrift store find. It is this black leathery material. I'm not even sure what it was supposed to be used for, but I love that pop. It matches that black that I paint. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to wrap it around this little can. Like I said, you just always want something a little bit different than the next guy. So why not? I have it. It didn't cost me much. It's not going to. I paid 67 cents for that can at a clearance section at Hobby Lobby. That's why I go into the clearance section, and I just wanted to make it a little bit different. Then now I'm just wrapping a couple pieces of this little bit thinner of jute. I'm not putting a bow. I'm just wrapping it just a couple 3 strands, letting them twist upon each other. And then here was another clearance at Menards in their Christmas section. I don't know, it doesn't really look terribly Christmassy to me, but it was galvanized, and I thought that will be a nice little pop against this little can. That little can has a weird little hanger off the side, and I thought, look, it already has jute, and so I can just hang it off the side. And I'm not going to put any florals in this. I can just, like little pencils, or if somebody else wants to put floral, whatever the buyer wants. Oh, I hope this is not too much for you all. I know I have a lot of it's those details that make a piece special. So yet again, here's another thrifted item I picked up at a Salvation Army. It is that burlappy, it's that jute, it's actually paper. And they had 2 rolls. I'll probably be sad that I didn't pick up both rolls, but I didn't want to be greedy and I want to make sure I was going to use it. So I wanted to fit it into this other bigger milk can. I did the same thing. I wrapped that black around the outer, around the can to make it a little bit something different. And now I just want a little bit of that pop. That burlappy to me looks like wood. Now I have to be careful here because I just want to put a little bit of hot glue on the 4 corners of this piece, because I don't want that, that hot glue is going to glop, whatever you want to say, right through that burlappy. So in my mind, I thought that I'm going to do a stamping on this also. I thought that burlappy, since it was paper, that brown would stamp okay, but it was too airy. There wasn't enough space to see it. So I'm grabbing a piece of my drop cloth left over that I always have on hand, and then I'm doing this great big It has something to do with cream, so it definitely fits in with this milk can. And so now I'm cutting this down to as small as I can get it, because unfortunately that stamp was almost the same size as that piece of burlap that I had cut. I'm going back in and I'm pulling a few of those strings off the edge. I want those to be frayed as well. Oh, now it's on to placements, because that is the exact same size as that underneath piece. So what I'm doing is I'm off centering it. Remember, the perfectly imperfect was whatever's pleasing to your eye. If you love it, hopefully somebody else will love it too. Nothing like going into my scrapbooking, my card making stash. That burlappy paper kind of stretched a little bit wonky at the bottom. So I'm looking for some embellishments, and look at here. I know it's hard to see, but look at, I found these little bitty stars. They are some brads, but I will just snip off that bottom and glue it until it is pleasing to my eye. Yep, I used to be a scrapbooker too, so I still have all this kind of stuff in my stash. So now to fill this milk can up, I'm going to take one of the larger stems of lavender that was $3.49, $3 something like that, and then a smaller stem that was there at Walmart for $1.47. So you're adding your cost in, but this is a little bit bigger round, a little bit more to fill. I won't need 100% of both, but I just want those different levels to fill up this can so it's nice and full. So here's that red envelope. Same procedure. I put that foam in. I did not glue that foam in. It's a nice tight fit. Put some of that grass to hide that ugly foam, but the foam has a purpose. If you went thrifting with me on Monday, you know this is why I had to go into Hobby Lobby, because I could only envision this dangly baby grass hanging from this envelope. That was my purpose of going in there and buying it at 40% off. So yes, I wanted this to be hanging. So I know it was already a hanging piece, but I needed to cut those off in pieces and parts. So what I'm doing here is, like I said, I cut it off in pieces, parts using those wire snips. But now I kind of felt like it wasn't upright enough. So as a hoarder, I'll save random pieces of wire, and that's right there. These are pieces I cut off some cotton stems that I didn't use. I bent them over, and now it's making that be more secure. For this little piggy, Chris needed to sand off any of that extra glue that squirts out, even though you try to rub it off. And then it had lots of cut marks. I personally would use it as a decor piece, but somebody back in the day used it as a cutting board. I guess that is what it is, but nowadays we are more into it being decorative. So he needs to sand all those cut marks off. My guess is why this poor little piggy came apart is that, yep, he was used as a cutting board, but then he also got wet. So eventually the two pieces came apart. Maybe it was the adhesion, the glue that they used. But so I had sanded the best of my ability to get it nice and smooth and as level as I could, but there's still a little bit of a gap. So what Chris is doing is just taking the sanding dust from the orbital sander and a little bit of that Tite Bond glue and mixing it together. And so what this is going to do is it's going to make a perfect match for the filler. So for a wood filler where there's a little bit of the gap, that's what he's doing. He's just making his own personal wood filler to fill in where the gap is on that little piggy cutting board. So now while he's waiting for that Tite Bond filler glue to dry, he is sanding the inside of these bowls for me. We're not sanding the outside. We're going to be painting those black, but the inside, I want to get that stain and that finish off. There's some beauty underneath this manufactured piece that I just want to show off. And no, it is not an easy task. And I'm very glad to have an orbital sander to get inside these bowls and get that finish off. Now that Chris got all of these wooden items, the tops of these sanded, I'm going in with some super clean and getting them all cleaned off. So now my vision for these pieces was to paint the bottom of these black. So that's why Chris did not need to sand the bottom of these. I had done a bowl and it had sold as soon as I put it in. So I got 3 other pieces to try it on, and we'll see how well these sell. Now to finish off where Chris had sanded these pieces, I am just going to be using some watered down Waverly wax. I love that you see all that graining of all this wood, but it just needs a little something to bring it back to life, but I don't want it to be as dark as what it was. I'm going to be using that same watered down mixture on this little piggy cutting board too. And then this piece and the two bowls, but not the piggy, will get a couple coats of polycrylic to seal and protect. Now, my plan for this piece was to make it a riser, so I'd already painted up that big candle holder, and so now what I'm doing is I'm going in and distressing this piece the way that I want it. So I'm just taking some 220 sandpaper on any edges to reveal some of that beautiful natural wood underneath, and then making it all smooth using some fine grit steel wool. And I'm doing the same thing with its base. I'm getting it all sanded before I get these two pieces glued together. Now to adhere these two pieces together, they are both wood. All I'm using is some E6000. That's the generous amount that I put on the top of it. I'm just going to center it to the best of my ability. I'm going to put a gallon of paint on top of it and let glue do what glue does and glue the two things together and let them sit there overnight. For the rest of the pieces that I have painted black that are wood, I'm going in and doing that same thing, that same distressing that I did with those other two pieces. This is just a look that I like. I like to see all those hidden details. Yep, just a straight line, a straight curve, a sharp edge is a detail to me. So now to finish up these black pieces after I got them all sanded and steel wool, I'm just using some Waverly antiquing wax in the brown. Oh my goodness, I just absolutely love what this product does to black paint. It just wipe on and wipe off. So now to finish up the inside of these bowls, I just took a little bit of the fine grit steel wool, took any bumpiness from that spray polycrylic, and then just finished them off with some Varathane wax.
So I hope that you enjoyed. I know it was a little bit on the longer side, but there's so much to share, so much vision, so much process. So I understand if you just fast forwarded through the beginning, what it was before and what it looked like at the end. I totally get that. But for other flippers or other people that might be interested in doing this, that is why I share the process. So don't forget to click on that playlist, check out Diane and Yanni's channel, and just sit back and enjoy your Sunday. And remember, if you are part of my YouTube family, words cannot express how appreciative that me and my husband are, that your kind words, your thumbs up, and just has helped YouTube recommend us, and our channel has just seen growth, and I appreciate it so, so very much. And if you are new to our channel and you like this kind of content, just hit that subscription button. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you know when I've uploaded a new video.